Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for coming this afternoon to our event at the Foreign Response Lab of Japan. We have a press conference about lessons from the Korean school, hate speech, special case, count case, and we have also we'll have a speech by our two guests, Mr. Shiki Tomimasu, he's attorney at law, and then Mr. Kim Sangyun, a parent of Kyoto Korean elementary school student. And we have the student here, Mr. Kim Taesu, graduate of the school. But he will not give a speech, but he is attending this event. And our guest will give a presentation, and then it will be followed by question and answer. We can start now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Shiki Tomimasu. I'm the lead counsel for the Kyoto Chosen Gakuen School Corporation. And I was a leader of a group of 100 lawyers, mainly from Kyoto, litigating this case. Mainly the civil case, claiming for damage. And as you may know, the Supreme Court has... Supreme Court has recently, last year in December, finalized the ruling to order payment of over 1,200 million yen to the racist demonstrators. Today, I mainly focus on the content of the Osaka High Court decision. Because what Supreme Court did was, with only 3 pages of the ruling, confirmed the validity, the rightness of the Osaka High Court decision. So this is what we feel the groundbreaking ruling in the Japanese legal history, so I am going to talk about why we think that way. Before we move on to the, sorry, may I have one handout for myself? Sorry, I forgot to fill in the page number. Sorry about that. Just to give you the brief overview of the Zainichi ethnic resident Koreans living in Japan. Mr. Matsui's newspaper article is brilliant, so I included in the page 13 and 14 of the handout, and it's not brilliant in the introduction, but the analysis part is what's brilliant. But it's doing very well, good job on the summarizing the overview of the historical background. So I will read it aloud. The Korean Peninsula came under Japanese colonial rule in 1910, and in 1940, the Japanese government adopted a policy forcing ethnic Koreans to take Japanese names. Also depriving language as well. Many Koreans were forced into manual labor in Japan during the war, and after the war ended, some 600,000 Koreans stayed in Japan, where they had built the foundation of their lives. There, Korean schools were established around Japan as a place for such people to regain their language and culture. And the school of the Kyoto incident, the Kyoto #1 Korean elementary school, targeted by the Zaitokukai in this case, was also born of this, out of this history, with many of the students' population spanning 2 generations. A 45-year-old parent whose 5th grade daughter at that time attended the school emphasized its significance, saying it's a place where the thoughts and longing of 1st and 2nd generation ethnic resident Koreans are passed on to 3rd and 4th generations. So let me brief it. Many of you probably had chance to take a look at some of the YouTube movies, but I will just show you the what happened at the Korean school. For this video, I would like you to focus on where the police officers are. I will point out later. So in this scene, there is a police officer. They have arrived after 15 to 20 minutes. They let the demonstration go on like this.
ただそれだけ。キムチ臭いね。キムチ食ってるしょうがないけど。アホちゃん。アホちゃんって何がアホや。
It's at the lunchtime, so as many as around 130 students were school kids were inside the building. It's not recorded on the video clip, so that's one of the sad things. People tend not to have a vision of how school kids were being frightened at the scene. So let me try to explain to you what was happening inside the school building. Well, depending on the location of these children, well, some children were more closely experiencing the effect of rallies than other children. The fifth grader and sixth grader was in a gymnasium, so they were a little bit separated, shut off from the noises to a certain extent, but they noticed something was going on. And the worst place was the third grade classroom. There were 18 children in the third grade classroom, and these kids were experienced the rally so closely that they started crying fiercely in their extreme confusion and anxiety. The teacher of the classroom thought that at that time those children may experience mental breakdown of some sort because they were crying so hard. And after a while, the sixth grader girls were coming back from the gym meeting room, and they noticed the third graders were in such a terrible condition. So, and they saw only one teacher handling the situation, and there is no way that one teacher could calm those kids down. So instantly those fifth or sixth graders, just as little as 12 years old or 11 years old, they started embracing those third graders and keep telling them, it's all right, it's all right, it's none of your fault, everything's all right. And so that was, when I imagine about what these fifth and sixth graders were thinking at that time, it definitely breaks my heart, because they themselves must have been very much in stress, but they saw those younger kids, so they suppressed the fear so that they can be helping those little kids. Other reports, after a while, many reports of abnormal behavior of those kids were reported. For example, some kids started to cry in the night for no reason. There were several reports on bedwetting problems. Onesho in Japanese, right? But turning back to baby. Younger children at the school seem to be experiencing lots of stress, so they are being restless, and they get more based on the observation of the teacher there, they seem to be more they can get angry very easily or something like that. So many kids, not only kids but the teachers also, were becoming very susceptible to the amplified voices coming from the なんていうんですか、amplified speaker car of the election. For example, election, during the period of election, Japanese politicians try to promote their own name by calling themselves their own names so many times with an amplified speaker, and they go around by the town. And those sounds, it's a common thing seen in Japan to overhear that kind of amplified voices from far away. But however, for these kids and the teachers who experienced the rally, that common sound became the trigger for emotional stress. There is a kid who, every time she arrives at school or she arrives at a station, she would call up their parents just to make sure the parents know where she is. I don't know if it's coming from the parents' side or from the kids' side. I think my impression is it came from kids' side. Kids want the parents to know where she is every time she moves around. There are kids who cannot stay home alone when parents goes to chores or shopping. And many parents, most of the parents maybe, they promise themselves with their spouses that they will never talk about the incident in the family. So there are serious effects in the inside the school building, which is not commonly told in Japanese media. And because I'm sorry for those who don't read Japanese, but I prepared the timeline on the first page. And the boxed item indicates the demonstration, the date the demonstration took place. There were 3 demonstrations, one in December, second in January and March. So over the span of a few months, the parents were in extreme distress. I forgot to mention about the parent who placed the GPS locator for kids, bag, school bag, landosel bag, and every morning and every evening she checks where the kid is, because you never know who would, some suspicious person may do harassment to her or kidnap her or whatever. In the mind of parents, of course she cares. And GPS, unfortunately, doesn't work 100%. So one day, the machine lost the kid trace. So the parent got so panicked. The mother called the school right away. Fortunately, the kid was safely there, so teacher could tell the parent that everything is all right. But this is a kind of stress for these 4 months and more to go. Those are the kind of stress day to day they had to experience, that parents and teachers and kids, of course, had to experience. So prolonged victimization. Okay, I'll try. I mentioned the presence of police officers in the movie. I put the screenshot right here. And this one is a police, I think, sorry. This, it's hard. This person is police officer, and this person is police officer. And they did not stop, and they did not arrest. We filed the criminal charge against them in December 21st for the hope that the police will initiate the investigation quickly. And that would send out a message to the public that it is not an acceptable act. In fact, it is a criminal act to be charged with punishment. And however, police, not only they didn't stop at the scene, they did not even start they started investigation, but they did not arrest them until August. So for the many months, the parents had to be in quite distress. And here is the paper duty. I don't have that with me, but duty roster for parents. For what? Can you imagine? It's a monitoring suspicious person every morning and every evening. Teacher and parents made this duty roster. For each time, one or two people will be always be present. Unfortunately, there are two gates. It's normal, right? There are two gates at the school, so they had to place those two every day for those two places. Silencing effect. This is considered to be one of the characteristics of hate crime or hate speech victimization. But I will let Mr. Professor Kim Sangyun Sensei talk about that in details later. And I also want to point out about the tendency for the victims to blame themselves. For example, one mother was she wasn't testifying. She was making comment at the meeting, and she was saying like this: "I feel guilty for not being able to protect my own children." But from third party's point of view, like lawyers like us, it's not her who is at fault. It's the perpetrators who has to be held responsible, liable. But still, it's a very common comment to hear every time you talk to victims. They will say it. They feel powerless. They feel they're blaming themselves. Parents' anxiety and insecurity, I talked about it, and so we started civil action. In fact, if, like I said, if the criminal action went through smoothly and also effectively reflecting the injury done to the ethnic identity, then we may not have needed a civil action, but criminal procedure was very much insufficient that we had to we chose to file the civil suit to shed light on the essence of the hate crime victimization that happened in this Kyoto Korean elementary school. However, it was so difficult for lawyers to collect those kind of testimonies. You were lucky because you got to listen to the digest version from my comment just a few minutes ago. But in order to get that kind of testimony, it took probably 2 or 3 years until the Korean parents or teachers feel comfortable with lawyers who are mainly Japanese, and the judicial system they won't talk about their own weakness. Maybe it's not their intention. It's simply they cannot organize what was going on inside them. When we prepared a brief to the court about hate crime victimization, hate speech victimization, and there was silencing effect and blaming themselves, we thought, to be honest, okay, sorry. I have to wrap up. So, let me try. Okay. Sorry, I got confused. Okay. So it was partly because I was my majority. It was difficult for me to grasp how the victim was experienced this hate speeches. When a person is attacked with hate speech, then at first she or he may feel, okay, that's a ridiculous a bunch of racist blurs. But soon he or she will realize there are people around them rallying together. And then realizing there is a Japanese society behind them. And that's when they started to get very scared. And they have their own family, they have their own relatives as well. So out of these many people, just one person comes into the weakest spot of those relative and family of the victim's side, then her everyday, day-to-day happy life is completely destroyed. Is that paranoia? Maybe not, considering the history of a terrible massacre cases during Kanto earthquake. And this is how it may look from the victim's perspective while walking the Shibuya or wherever Kawaramachi crossroad. And people you may never know what other people are thinking. And if there is just one single person, then your life can be destroyed. So that's the kind of fear they are feeling. There are also, I also made a slide on the destruction of community relationship, but I may wait till the end. One thing I have to say is this case was not. This case was actually hate crime. So the police has to deal with the situation. And so if we appropriately view this incident as hate crime, then you will notice that there is a connection with the past. And there were many harassment cases and criminal cases against criminal acts against the school kids since 2019, whatever, and there was a poster made for that. However, people tend to think of this hate speech as a new phenomena and disconnect from the history. So what happens, they will overlook the non-active police liability and unequal treatment on the police and repeated third recommendation, people don't take it seriously. And also the governmental brutality exerted on the Korean school in 1948 and 49. There is a definite connection to that. And also connection with the exclusion on the tuition waiver program currently. Those are all targeted to close down the Korean schools. Isn't that in common with what Zaitokukai warning? Isn't our society responsible? Okay, so but I think I should leave. I couldn't reach the conclusion, so I will stop here. And if I have an opportunity in the Q&A session, I will jump in. Thank you.
Please. The father will talk.
キム・サンギュンと申します。富松先生からも概要がございました。で、この在特会に対する京都朝鮮学校の裁判というものは、一言で言いますと、否定の否定のための闘争です。これはかつての哲学者ヘーゲルが言ったように、否定する事柄を改めて否定することによって新たな社会を作るということの意味だと思います。何が否定かというと、彼ら在特会の人たちはまさに朝鮮学校を否定するため、攻撃するために白昼堂々、そして子どもたちがいる時にあえて朝鮮学校に攻撃に来たということです。で、これは朝鮮学校に対する攻撃否定と同時に、朝鮮学校の子どもたち、学生に対する攻撃、そして否定であったわけです。で、それに対して私たちはこの否定する行動をまさに日本の裁判所の口を通じて否定する、そういったことはダメなんだよというふうなですね、ことをするために戦ってきた裁判です。
Hello, I've already been introduced. My name is Sangyun Kim. The lawyer, Mr. Tomimasu, has explained in great detail the outline or summary of this case. When I look at the lawsuit that was brought against the Kyoto Korean School Corporation, I believe that it's just fundamentally a case about, and the word that is being used is hite, which can be translated as denial or negation, but it's basically we fought to deny the attempts to deny our existence. What I mean by this, and I'm quoting some words of the great philosopher Hegel, who basically said that by denying what other people are trying to deny, you basically create a new society. And the interpreter apologizes if that is not a literal translation. But what I'm saying is that the Zaitokukai, the citizen group against the special rights for Koreans, which is this group that created demonstrations in front of the Korean school. Basically, they were trying to deny not only the existence of the Korean school, but the fact that they staged their demonstrations in the middle of the day without any reservations whatsoever, in the middle of the day where students were actually studying, showed that they were basically trying to negate or deny not only the existence of the Korean school itself, but also of the children studying there. So it was an attack against both the school and a negation of the school or denial of the school, and also an attack against the children and a negation of their own existence. And we had to, we felt, bring the court case, the courts into this conversation. In other words, we had to have a specific official statement from the court saying that this kind of attempt to deny a person or an organization or a group of people's existence is unacceptable. That is why we filed this court case.
まだいいですか。じゃあ、こういったような攻撃っていうものは単に物理的な暴力だけじゃなくて、具体的に現在制度的な暴力排除として現れています。それは朝鮮学校の子どもたちの高校無償化制度への排除です。こういったヘイトスピーチっていうものは将来の社会的、そして制度的な排除、そして先ほどご説明がありましたように、かつてあったような関東大震災におけるいわゆるマイノリティに対する暴力っていうものを当然視、正当視するような社会的な環境を作る、非常に危険な事象だというふうにですね、理解していただきたいと思います。
I would also like to point out that we take this case very, very seriously, because when we talk about an attack, we mean more than simply a physical attack against the students or against a school, but we believe that this is an indication or a symptom of something that is more systematic and more widespread. It is an expression of an attempt to create a system where the use of violence and the use of methods to basically exclude a certain group of people from Japanese society is taking a root in Japan. As was mentioned in the presentation earlier, for example, we see that the Korean schools have been exempted from the tuition waiver program. That is a very systematic attempt to try to basically exclude these Korean schools from Japanese society. we believe that the hate speeches are also part of this overall system to try to, or attempt to eliminate or exclude these schools and these groups of people. And what we are very, very concerned about is that this is a very dangerous trend. In the future, it could lead to something quite frightening. And the reason I say this is, as Mr. Tomisawa said a few moments ago, there was already an incident in 1923 after the Great Kanto or Great Tokyo earthquake, where because there already was this feeling within Japanese society that a certain group of people were different and should be excluded, it was all right, therefore, to take out one's anger and to blame and commit violence against these kinds of people. So this is the kind of future that we are very afraid might occur again, the systematic creation of an environment where the majority of Japanese people feel that it is all right, okay, commonsensical to exclude a certain group of people.
Thank you very much. We would like to open the floor for questions and answers. Please raise your hand and proceed to the mic and tell your name and affiliation and ask one question. Who would like to take the first question? Okay, Fujita-san.
日本語ではよろしいですか。国民新聞論説委員の藤田博之と申します。右翼新聞とみなされる方もいらっしゃいます。今ビデオとか見させていただいて、例えば朝鮮学校の子どもたちとかですね、に非常に暴力的な、ヤクザのような言動ですね、これはもう当然許されるべきことはないと思います。反対です。ただ一方でですね、その在徳会以外の保守の、方々、学者とか言論人も含めて、例えばその、朝鮮学校とかですね、その在り方に、見解としてはですね、在徳会と似たような見解を持っている方もいらっしゃるんじゃないかなと思うんですね。でちょっとご参考までにお伺いしたいんですが、その高校の今無料の扱いを受けていると、これにつき高校の今お話、
排斥されてる
無償化の話ですね。
無償化の話、そこをですね、多分お分かりにならない方もいらっしゃると思うんで、なんで例えばアメリカの方とか日本の方と比べてどこが違うのかとかですね、なんか特権があるというふうに在徳会とか言ってるんですよね。その部分をちょっと説明していただければと思います。
I'm Fujita. I'm from the Kokumin Shimbun, which is a newspaper which is considered perhaps leaning toward the right. However, I watched the videos that you showed me, and in regard to what the members of the Zaitokukai were doing there, the kinds of violent activities that they were engaged in, which reminded one of gangsters, of Yakuza, especially when in the presence of or directed towards children, that is something that I certainly do not approve of. I oppose this very strongly. Having said this, however, there are people that do not act in this manner, that do not act in the way of this Zaitokukai, but there are people who are involved in expressing their ideas, journalists, etc., writers, etc., also academics, who in many ways share some of the similar opinions or thinking of the members of the Zaitokukai. Of course, they do not approve of their methods. In other words, the reason for the Korean schools, the Chosen schools, the way that they are structured, the kind of teaching that they are engaged in, some of the people in Japan feel that these kinds of persons, ethnic Koreans residing in Japan, have been given special rights. But having said all of this, not everybody understands this situation in Japan. Especially for people from abroad, from the United States, for example, they do not understand, for example, why the Japanese government decided to exclude these Chosen or Korean schools from the tuition waiver program. So can you give us some background as to what these kinds of schools are like?
Okay. If you look at the handout, of page 16 and 15 and 16 ですかね。It have some background information on that issue in the beginning. The justification for the government, well, the government presented the policy after North Koreans あれはミサイルですかね。rocket attack done by North Korean government. So the assumption is that there is a connection between the Korean school in Japan and the North Korean government. However, the minister clearly stated it was because Japanese national sentiment would not give support and understanding for funding applying the tuition waiver program. However, there is no grounds for such assumption that there is a connection between the North Korean government and the school. There are, to a certain extent, connection, but not to the degree to justify discriminatory treatment. You can. This is something you might want to. I picked up from the Japan Times. I will read it out. The government should heed the words of Mr. Shigeru Yokota-san ですね、Yokota san, the father of Ms. Megumi Yokota, who was abducted in 1978 by North Korean agent. Tokyo Shimbun quoted him as saying, "It is unreasonable to discriminate against second and third generation Koreans living legally in Japan. I would like Korean schools to sufficiently teach the abduction issue, but I think it is unreasonable to make the children take responsibility for the abduction." And another editorial, this is a little bit different issue, but it says, "Students are not political pawns." Students doesn't have the power to change the policy of North Korean government or school, neither school officials, and it's simply a feeding the misunderstanding of Japanese society and the prejudice of the Japanese society. Therefore, by enlarging the hate crime pyramid, which I didn't have time to explain in details, but the basic idea is the widespread prejudice and bias, unjust bias, will feed the advent of Zaitokukai-like hate speech and hate crime, and eventually genocidal acts. So what this exclusion is doing is feeding the Japanese public prejudice. So that is doing exactly what the Zaitokukai is trying to do. So I would like to you all to take a moment to think about that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Taking too long. Another thing, at the court case, not many people know that in Japan, Japanese public not many knows that judge himself came to the Korean school, the building site, and also there are tons of materials. I shouldn't say tons. Quite voluminous proving material about the education within the school. And after the careful examination of listening to Zaitokukai's arguments as well, and our argument as well, combined that, the judge decided that Zaitokukai's claim is discriminatory. So that has quite a bit of weight when you think about their claims' credibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Patrick.
Carsten Germes from Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung in Germany. I have two questions. The first is, these groups are not the center of Japanese society. Most Japanese don't like them. So why do you have the impression that they really change the society? You showed this photo with this victim crossing the road and maybe thinking everybody has some prejudices against me. So, and you talked about a strategy. If there's a strategy, there has to be somebody behind the strategy. So it's not these groups, or are they so powerful that you think they can change a society, or is there more than these groups? This is the first question. The second is, according to the schools, do you know the subsidies? How far does it really bring risk for the existence of these schools? How this was 40%, 50%, 100% of the money the school needs to run. How much did the Japanese prefectures support the schools before? So is this a real financial problem for them, or was it only 15, 20% and they could survive without this? And maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I heard, in Kanagawa, there have been discussions with the prefecture, and they said maybe if you change some of the school books or so, we could find a way to bring back the... Is this true, or is it completely out of discussion? And maybe I add a last question. This experience in Kyoto, are there any other Korean schools had the same experience with the groups shouting and demonstrating, or is it just an exception and just this one school where these groups protested and shouted and had hate speeches? Or is this a normal experience for other Korean school kids meanwhile?
すみません、じゃあ、ドイツの新聞記者でございます。3つの質問があります。1つは今回はその在特会へのお話でございますが、これは私の理解ではその日本社会の中心的なその存在でもないグループだと思うんでございます。つまり多くの日本人はあんまり在特会の方たちを好きではないというふうに思うんでございます。しかしながら先ほどお写真を見せてくださったわけでございますね。在日の若い方が道路を歩いていたら、周りの人たちがみんなそういう悪いことを在特会が言うような悪いことを思ってるんじゃないかというふうに、考えている。つまりどうしてこの組織がそんなに強い力を持っているというふうに思われるんでしょうか。つまりこのグループが戦略を持っているっていうような、なんかそのシステムを全体的に変えるっていうような動きがあるというような話もあったんですけど、このグループがそれをできる能力を持っていると思いますでしょうか。それとももっと違う力っていうのが動いているんでしょうか。で2つ目の質問でございますが、その国庫無償化ということでという話でございますが、具体的にどのぐらいのその金額の話になるのでございましょうか。つまり今まで各県とかがどのぐらいのその助成金を出していたのでしょうか。これによって学校運営がもう困るかということでございますでしょうか。そして間違っているかもしれませんが、神奈川県の方で、その朝鮮学校とのディスカッションというのが進んでいるって聞いております。例えば一部の教科書を変えたら、その補助金を出せるかもしれないというような話があるって聞いてるんですが、間違ってますでしょうか。でこのような凱旋運動っていうのは、活動っていうのは、その京都の学校の前だけで行われたんでしょうか。それとも全国の他のところでもこのようなことがありましたんでしょうか。
一つ目の質問ですね。この在特会の動きっていう、確かにその彼らの発言っていうふうなものについては非常にですね、嫌悪感を抱かれる方も多いかと思います。しかし、 昨年のですね、朝日新聞等々の報道によりますと、年間でですね、180件以上のですね、類似のデモが行われているというふうなことで言いますと、かなり頻繁化しているというふうなことです。で、彼らはですね、非常に一つ言いますね、自分たちは被害者であって、そしてまた自分たちは差別はしていないというふうな言い方ですね。はい。でその意味ではドイツでも同じです。ドイツのペギーダという運動がありますね。それとよく似ている、いわゆる愛国的ヨーロッパ人運動で、彼らも自分たちは差別主義者でない、移民の人たちを排除してない、ただ自分たちの社会に同化しなさいというふうなことを言っている。その点では同じだ。
First of all, in regard to your first question, yes, I do agree that many people in Japanese society regard the Zaitokukai with something akin to hatred. They are not in favor of them. Having said this, however, according to media reports in the Asahi newspaper last year, there have been some 180 such similar demonstrations throughout the country. So it seems that the frequency of these kinds of demonstrations are increasing, so that is something that we are quite concerned about. Also, one thing that concerns us about their statements is that they insist that they are not discriminating against other people. They are saying that, if anything, we are the victims. In other words, they are saying that it's very similar to what is happening in your own nation. This word is Pegida? Pegida movement. You know what this means? Basically, it means that Europe is a land for Europeans, and if anything, we are victims and we're being oppressed. And what we want to do is, what we're doing is not oppressing others or discriminating against others. We're not necessarily saying that immigrants have to leave, but if they're going to stay, they have to be assimilated. And that is the same thing that basically the Zaitoku people are saying to us.
で2つ目の質問については、高校無償化については、全朝鮮学校の子どもたちが高校生で全高校生が受給された場合に、それは今厳密には2億円以下の問題です。これが一つで、もう一つ、私立朝鮮学校の補助で言いますと、京都で言いますと、私立小学校中学校の補助、市府が提供している補助に対して、朝鮮学校の子どもたちは5分の1以下というふうな問題性がございます。
In regard to your question about the tuition waiver program, if all this tuition waiver program is designated for high school students, as you know, and if all of the Korean high school students were to be able to receive this tuition waiver, that amount would in total amount to less than 200 million yen in total, if all of their tuition were paid for by the government. And also in regard to the Korean schools, there is the prefecture of Kyoto and the city of Kyoto, and the amount of subsidies that they give. This is for elementary schools and junior high schools. The amount of subsidies being given by the city and prefecture amount to about 1/5 of the tuition costs.
はい、それで3つ目の問題、この度の在特会の動きで言いますと、京都朝鮮第一初級学校というものがまさに彼らの運動のメッカになっていたという意味では、朝鮮学校に対して2009年の12月から2010年3月までにわたって3回の凱旋が行われています。
In regard to your third question, the attacks or the demonstrations in front of the Korean elementary school number 1, which is the center of this court case, has become a kind of mecca for the Zaitoku persons. As was mentioned in the timeline described by the Mr. Tomisawa earlier, they had staged 3 very active demonstrations beginning in December of 2009 and ending the last one in March of 2010.
神奈川県の問題については、おそらくこれはですね、拉致問題に絡んだ議論だろう。しかし、これは本来的に学校教育として朝鮮学校がどのような教育をしていたのかということとは、私は別問題というふうに考えています。その意味ではですね、いわゆる教育の自由、学問の自由に対する侵害ということをですね、やはり日本の社会として捉え直した上でこの問題をですね、理解すべきではないか。だからその意味で議論行政とですね、学校側が真摯な意味で議論をしたというふうには私は捉えていないです。
In regard to your question about the discussions that were held with the Kanagawa prefectural government and Korean schools, I think probably the center of the discussions revolved around the abduction idea. However, but I believe that fundamentally this is an issue that should be separated from the ideal of school education. In other words, when we talk about the freedom of education, freedom of academia, that should be something that should be respected, and these the rights of freedom in these areas should never be infringed upon. And I think this is the approach that Japanese society should take in looking at this problem.
May I add to the first question? You asked me how powerful. You are questioning the powerfulness of the Zaitokukai group to transform the society. I think that's I would suggest asking a different question. Would they be effective in stimulating one person out of so many whole Japanese population to conduct something terrible to one of the people of the Korean descent? And sure, the Japanese people in general probably would not agree with what they are saying or what they are trying to achieve. But what is more scary is just this one single person out of just he or she may be watching YouTube video by himself at a very remote town somewhere in Japan. Then one day, out of those prejudice and whatever, he may choose to take action. When you are starting to think about such possibility, you would, I started to feel that it's not paranoia at all. It's a actual clear threat, concrete threat. So what we are talking about is what we are concerned about is not really those perpetrators themselves or those rally participants. Rather, the society, the pyramid, hate pyramid expansion, that is more dangerous in a sense than the actual participants. So that's the reason why Osaka High Court decision is so important, that Japanese society send a message to those remote people that may not come out to the rallies, but sending them a message that Japanese society would not accept racism.
Thank you. Yes, John. I think this.
John Boyd, Al Jazeera English News. Some clarifications, please. You mentioned 180 demonstrations. Could you give us the source for that and the period? And excuse my ignorance, but is it only North Korean schools that are being targeted? Are there South Korean schools actually in Japan? And if so, are they being targeted as well? And then my main question would be, what is the main, or what are the main factors behind these demonstrations? There have been problems for a long, long time with abductions, and more recently the problems about the island, ownership of the islands. But what has started this, given that there's been this long history? Thank you.
はい。具体的なデモの数は私自身も新聞やですね、統計を見て知っただけで、その規模っていうものについては具体的なことは分からないです。ただ何度かですね、大きなデモ、大阪や京都でのデモにはですね、遭遇してそれに抗議した経験はあります。で2つ目
So first of all, in regard to your question about the 180 demonstrations that were held, this is actually something that I have not researched myself, but as I mentioned earlier, read in the Asahi newspaper. And in regard to the scope of some of these demonstrations, I really do not have detailed data. But I have actually seen and participated in some of the demonstrations that were held in Osaka and Kyoto, and have actually protested against them.
About the second question. Well, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking me what is the root or what is the grounds for their claim. Is that more or less what you're trying to ask?
Why is it happening now in the last couple of years, given the long history of problems with what started this?
Okay. About the rally itself, I would have to say it's an internet movie. This is something it's so easy to reach out to those tiny percentage of those. I shouldn't say I should say eccentric way of thinking people. If 10 people can gather through the internet, that constitutes a threat, actual threat to the school. And I should say the factor would be the internet and also economic.
Sorry, internet is not 2 years ago. It's much more. It's like 10 years ago. He asked you what the 2 years ago.
Motivation. Why did it happen 2 years ago, 3 years ago? What was the cause?
2 years ago.
そうですね、在日のその歴史っていうのは長いでございます。そしてインターネットが存在しているのも結構もう10年以上続いているわけでございますが、この過去数年間に突然にこのような運動が激しくなってきたんですけど、それがなぜなんでしょうかというふうに思います。
But I should question the assumption. Is it happening in the last 2 or 3 years? The actuality is there have been lots of cases of violence against those school children. It is simply not broadcasted. Japanese Bar Association actually created this poster about 10 years ago, and it has to appeal that so many incidents of harassment are happening, and it has been repeatedly recommended by the Committee on Eradication of Racial Discrimination, CERD. But Japanese newspapers and media did not broadcast that as widely as this last recommendation. So there is an internet factor in terms of the racist rallies or demonstrations. In that particular form, sure, it's a new phenomenon, but it's not a new phenomenon in terms of every time there is a political uneasiness, something happens in North Korea, all the resident Koreans, Zainichi Koreans, parents have to watch carefully the TV show and worry about what's going to happen to my kids. There is absolutely no connection, no justification for having to go through such fear. So that's what the government has to send a message about. It's unjust to link the school children's safety and the North Koreans' political whatever.
Please proceed.
あと韓国系の学校はあるんでしょうか。そして同じように対象になっているんでしょうか。
なっていないです。
And yes, there are South Korean schools, but they are not targeted in the same way. They are not treated in the same way.
Okay. I think we run out of time, but he wants to wrap up the
whole presentation. Or?
Yeah, we finished the time. I think it's until time, but maybe if you want to say something.
The concluding remark.
Very briefly, please.
Okay. Thank you.
If anybody has a question, also I would allow one question.
Thank you for your warning. Actually, I think you the person from the Germany.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the very important incident. There is one person who attacked the teacher in a Korean school in Kobe. And the incident was broadcasted in the newspaper article initially, but we don't know what happened afterwards. It may be, we don't know for sure, but it may be the case that he is not, he cannot be criminally persecuted because of capability issues or any other issues. But the victimization is actual. It doesn't have to do with whether we can hold that person liable legally or not. It's the actual victimization is an important issue. That's why we think to look at this phenomena as a society as a whole, how much prejudice there are and how much prejudice there inciting. So if there is a prejudice and bias, then the pyramid goes upward. There's going to be a violence, and there could be a genocide. And sorry, final remark.
What do you mean by genocide? Like you said genocide. What do you mean genocide?
Like a Holocaust or like
Holocaust against who, by who?
To minorities.
So you mean Holocaust by Japanese against Koreans?
Theoretically, and and also the government's responsibility to tackle or this racial discrimination issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your insights about the situation of your minority here. And we also, we report everything, and we sometimes report the so-called Oyoku, also screaming at American embassy sometimes. So I personally didn't see only such attack on Koreans, but we hope the case is proceed, and all the best. Thank you for coming this evening, and have a nice day. Thanks.
Thank you very much.